Devil's Friday. This is The Woo Report. The Woo Report, episode 275, titled Supporting Your Devils Fan Communities. I gotta change the title. Whoops. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Supporting your Devils fans communities. There we go. There we go. I fixed the title. Supporting your Devils fans community. What do I mean by that? Well, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a talk tonight. Happy Devil's Friday to you, Ryan Hutner, in the Facebook Live. Selected Boy, Ramona Rice. We're going to talk about supporting your fellow Devils fans communities. Today, earlier, it got me thinking. If you've ever read the blog all about the jersey, I believe it was John Fisher that put out a blog about what was going on with SB Nation. SB Nation, owned by Vox Media. We've had the SB Nation founder on, big Devils fan, Tyler Blazinski, a couple times here on the Let's Go Devils podcast. Hardcore Devils fan. And the reality is there were layoffs at SB Nation. And only several of these NHL sites within the SB Nation family, the end of life will be gone, will no longer be supported. And these are some of the names that are not going to be continued. It's hard to believe that their tenure with SB Nation will be done. And the two words that was written on the All About the Jersey blog was status quo, that they made the cut. And, it got me thinking. It got me thinking how important it is to support your Devils fan communities. It's very important. And it can mean it can be an online community that what All About the Jersey has done, say if they weren't so lucky to be continuing with SB Nation. What would you do? What would you do if pucksandpitchforks.com suddenly vanishes? The cruel reality, folks, is that in this case, when it comes to media, anything can happen. Companies get bought, mergers and acquisitions. Online communities that were built organically over years could just vanish like this. Even the Let's Go Devils podcast could vanish in a heartbeat. And I think it's important to know that the Let's Go Devils podcast from day one has never been about Beer Baron or myself or Shorts Guy, Scotty, Nick Villano, Vinny Parisi. It was never about us. It was really about all of us. And I wanted to just really get in depth here because after reading that blog, and if you haven't read it yet, go to allaboutjersey.com about the status quo, the state of what's going on with SB Nation. The bottom line is there are layoffs, and there will be always continue to be layoffs. And we should not take these Devils fan communities for granted. You've got avid readers, avid listeners, even of this podcast and many other Devils podcasts out there, like what Trey Matthews has with Locked On Devils. And the reality is nothing really lasts forever. And that's why you have to support your Devils fans community by Devils fans, because it can be gone in an instant. We all complain about the lack of coverage. We all complain about that the Devils never get their due, which is why we should support. You've got Ryan Novozinski at NJ.com, who has a following. NJ.com, remember when NJ.com had Chris Ryan, but Chris Ryan left and there was that lull. Or NorthJersey.com, it was Robert Aiken running the show, but again, budget cuts. Budget cuts, that's what they say. But to me and to you, there's no excuse. You've got to cover the New Jersey Devils if they are in your backyard. But the reality is, in terms of Devils coverage, it's all about the dollars and cents. And this podcast itself it is an online community. And it's also a community that meets up at American Whiskey or whatever event that we're at. And, I can't imagine life right now without this podcast, because it's been a big part of my life, doing this every day, getting up in front of the camera on days that you don't really want to. But I never really took it for granted, because when you have a platform like this, if you put yourself in my shoes, you don't take this for granted. Because it used to be, when I used to do this podcast 5 years ago, literally I'd be happy if my parents were actually watching, because nobody was watching. But when you do this podcast, you have to assume everybody's watching, even though you don't know that. Even though you may not have anybody watching or listening, or what, for that matter. And I think this is important, because the Devils are right now second place of the Metropolitan Division. The playoffs could be a reality. And it's important to support each other with these communities. And, when I read that blog on All About the Jersey, I'm saddened to hear about the layoffs. Steph Driver, she does a lot with SB Nation. I believe she's the editor of all these sites. That she didn't make the cut, and a lot of these notable brands, I don't know what's going to happen to them, but they're not going to be with SB Nation anymore. Where's the funding going to come from? I mean, even this podcast itself, I'm not saying that we're going to end tomorrow. But again, never take it for granted. And that's why a lot of times I don't like a lot of the online trash talking of people like Amanda Stein that gets a lot of crap online. And, even All About the Jersey, pucksandpitchforks.com gets a lot of crap. We get a lot of crap. Now, we understand that you may have an opinion, but just remember one thing. Like I said again, it could all go away in an instant, and you don't have these type of online communities anymore. Other Devils fan communities, I'll give you an example. The Devils fan club. The Devils fan club. They have Trudy, good friend of the podcast, is featured on some of those MSG Network commercials. And, there's the Devils fan club. Why not support them? What happens if there's no Devils fan club? It's actually affiliated with the NHL, and it actually has that alliance, that that association with the actual NHL and the New Jersey Devils. See Steve Engel popping in. Max says, just know you all are appreciated. Thank you, Max. And again, it's just something that I just thought of. I mean, right now the Devils are coming back from Seattle. You got a big game on Sunday. It's Friday night. And we do want to support our fellow Devils fan. It's not easy doing articles every day like Nick Villano and Vinny Parisi, doing podcasts like this. There are other podcasts out there. Not once have you ever heard us really, 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 really trash them. And there's a reason for it. This podcast started with 3 Devils fans at a bar. Now we've added a couple, and we've added you as part of the conversation, which is why we do this live video, live social media podcast. It's different. We value opinion. And you all have supported us in many different ways. We got Ramona Rice from Kentucky religiously popping on to the YouTube Live. She was on Facebook at one point, but you know what? It's social media bar hopping as far as I'm concerned. We've got Colin 226 who gives great suggestions to make the podcast better. Following up, and I'll get to his review. Remember when I asked this online community of the Let's Go Devils podcast that a couple people were just thought it was funny to give us a 1-star and just trash us on our podcast pages, but you, the Devils fan, answered the call. Now we're getting rave reviews, burying all the negativity on the Apple Podcast page. Rate, review, and subscribe. Did you do that? Yes, you did. And there are many ways to support the Devils fan communities, and you guys did that with us. So I'm glad to see all about the Jersey status quo. Hopefully they thrive, even though their counterparts and colleagues did not. But you, the fans, deserve better, and obviously all about the Jersey has its supporters. And congratulations. I shouldn't even say that because it's a lot did not make the cut, but really just we got your back, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing because it's really all about us. Devils fans against the world is what I would say. Josh S. says, yeah, like Fire Lindy was much. LOL. Yeah, but that was like more of tough love from Jersey fans. I wrote that about that on Pucks and Pitchforks, .com. Reading some of the comments. Happy Devils Friday to you, Mike Rossi. Andre from Norway. Hello. Tuning in. Rob Klabosis tuning in. Rob Klabosis, Devils Diehards Facebook group, has always supported the Let's Go Devils podcast and vice versa. We've also have friends of the podcast like Arlette, Pete, Chico Resch, Bryce Salvador, Matt Lachlan, If you remember, Steve Cangelosi used to pop on every now and then. And I think we're all coming together at a good time, at a great time. And remember during the pandemic when we didn't have that feeling that we didn't have Devils hockey for 9.5 months. That feeling that we'll never get to see this team blossom. It's taking forever, and now it's taken away from us. Remember that feeling of vulnerability. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And I like to see us support each other, the fan communities around the NHL. There are other podcasts aside from the Let's Go Devils podcast. There are other blogs out there. pucksandpitchforks.com. We're just such great friends, and we've kind of built not only just a strategic alliance, but we're truly friends behind the scenes. Always supporting each other. Kill them with kindness, we say. Kill them with kindness. There's a lot of love going on here on the Let's Go Devils podcast. Mike Rossi said that 9.5-month hiatus was brutal without Devils hockey. I couldn't agree with you more. If that doesn't make you appreciate Devils hockey, I don't know what will. And oftentimes I see that fans are just jabbing at each other, especially Devils fans. There's these cliques inside the arena. It's a very fragmented fan base that we're trying to turn the page as the franchise is at year 40 right now. And I think it's a good thing, folks, that we stick together because the Devils are getting better. We've got a world-class player in Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton. Vitek Vanacek is just doing so well right now. Mackenzie Blackwood, how about that game last night? I know he gave up that game-winning goal in overtime, but you know what? All those point-blank range shots, that deserves some credit. And just think about that game when the Devils played Toronto. That was the game they lost when the winning streak ended. I'll never forget how loud that building was. How loud that building was, where Devils fans were all caught up on that winning streak and letting the refs know how they felt. Yeah, I think a couple fans got carried away. I'm not going to harp on them on that, but just remember that feeling when we were all united as one. Even the Toronto Maple Leafs said that that was a playoff game, a real playoff game. And they took notice. It's not an individual effort. I mean, you got to practice what you preach. We know that hockey is a team game. We always talk about start to finish with the New Jersey Devils playing as a team, not as individuals, making sacrifices. We as fans have to do the same. Set an example. Bill says Mac Black was plus 3 goals saved last night. .3. I can't even read. Sorry about that, Bill. Max says refs haven't been really in our corner all year. Last game against the Kraken was really bad too. Got to stay united. You got to support your Devils fans. And all the blogs that are out there. There are other websites as well that I haven't even mentioned. Small online communities, small or big, you should support. And that's all I have to say. And the Let's Go Devils podcast, we can't thank you enough for your support of this fine programming. that we do pretty much every day. And again, make sure that you support all your Devils fans communities. And I don't mean specifically about money. I mean about reading articles, comments, good constructive criticism, listening to each other, difference of opinions, new ideas, presenting things in a non-inflammatory way. I told you once that Lindy Ruff was the coach for this season. A lot of you disagreed. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about supporting your communities. Remember, it can be taken away in a heartbeat. There are no guarantees. That's why I ask you to support your fellow Devils fans that work hard behind the scenes. A lot of them work for peanuts, elephants pay, or even no pay, like this podcast. Labor of love. That kind of loyalty and devotion to a team is priceless. And that's all I have to say. Before we go, I want to read a couple reviews, maybe one, maybe two reviews, on the Let's Go Devils podcast, Apple Podcast. As please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast because it's important to us. And you, the fans, have come through, and I like reading positive reviews. Not to stroke our egos or anything. But you see the community coming together like never before. Technique, yo! All right, so trying to get to the reviews here. Column 26. Best NJ Devils podcast. As a diehard NJ Devils fan and season ticket holder, this is my favorite podcast for following the team. You can tell Sam has a true passion and love for the Devils. They do a great job with pre- and post-game coverage, plus the Wednesday and Sunday shows that occasionally feature outside guests. My favorite show, though, is the Woo Report, which is what you're listening to right now, because Sam just chats, rants about a random topic, and you never know what to expect. It's also fun to be able to interact with the shows live on other platforms. If you only have time to follow one Devils podcast, this is it! Exclamation point. Thank you, Colin. Your kind words mean a lot. I'll tell you, I sometimes just surprised, sometimes so surprised that the Woo Report, people listen. Again, I'm not the end-all, be-all with my opinions. I just have opinions. We all have opinions. But I think it's a great way to just sometimes, the premise of the Woo Report was really just kind of originally just to fill in the gaps when there's no games. But also I use the platform just to tell you what's going on behind the scenes. Because, a lot of us, now Scotty is in the industry that, we don't want to be a bunch of phonies talking with our fake radio voice. No. Support all Devils podcasts, says Heads Up Hockey Podcast. Of course. Support them all. Support them all. If they have great intentions, support them all. We're all Devils fans here. If anything, we're going to rule the online world. Thank you, Colin, for your review. If you haven't done so yet, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts. Can't thank you, the fans. This has been a record week for our podcast. Our numbers are through the roof. We're going to hit the 500,000 faster than projected. And today was actually a daily record. Single daily record for downloads today. We were not expecting that, but guess what? You folks deserve it. We love our truckers. We love our third shift Devils fans that work their butts off in the middle of the night. Whatever they're working on, they're listening to the Let's Go Devils podcast. We always want to stay connected with the team, and that's what we do here. And never take any of your Devils fan communities, big or small, ever for granted. Keep supporting because we need each other. Thank you. I'm going to hit the music. We're going to have a Woo Report tomorrow night, before the Giants game. I'll get one in. So maybe around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern. Then Sunday, American Whiskey. I'll be there live for Game Day Live. And then we have Devils After Dark being in studio here. Hockey on Tap podcast will be broadcasting from Mullet Arena. We'll talk a little bit about that because Short Sky is part of the Hockey on Tap Mullet Arena. And then the Sunday edition of the Let's Go Devils podcast, we have a special guest. We talk about the private jet. We talk about the $35 million private jet that will fly around with our fellow Devils fans. Well, on Sunday, our special guest, his name is Jeremy Katz, the pilot that drew up his flight plan as a Devils logo. We may have found our pilot before the plane. Stay tuned. Be well. Support your fellow Devils fans communities. Till next time, let's go Devils.